Rain washed across downtown Chicago. The city glittered beneath thousands of reflections, every skyscraper mirrored on the wet streets below, 40 stories above the traffic. The rooftop restaurant Lumiere overlooked the entire skyline. Soft jazz drifted through hidden speakers. Crystal chandeliers glowed with warm golden light. Guests laughed quietly over expensive wine. Everything felt peaceful, elegant, ordinary, until 3 black SUVs pulled silently beneath the building. Every valet immediately stepped aside. The restaurant manager straightened his jacket. Security discreetly checked every entrance. Inside the first SUV, Matteo Romano looked at his phone. One unread message. Table 17, 7:30 p.m. He frowned slightly. Who scheduled this? His longtime advisor, Luca Ferraro, glanced at his tablet. Our cyber team traced the accountant. Matteo never looked away from the rain. The one laundering money for Moretti? Yes. He requested a private dinner. Matteo nodded once. No police? No. No witnesses? None. Matteo calmly stepped from the vehicle. His black Italian suit fit perfectly. No tie. White shirt. Luxury watch. Calm gray eyes. Everything about him radiated quiet authority. The restaurant staff immediately lowered their heads. No one dared greet him first. Everyone simply moved out of his way. At the exact same moment, across the city, Emily Carter stared nervously into her apartment mirror. No, she sighed. Too formal. She removed her navy dress. Another one. Too bright. Then another. Finally, she smiled. An elegant emerald green dinner dress. Simple. Comfortable. Beautiful. Her best friend Sarah leaned against the bedroom door. You've changed 4 times. Emily laughed. I haven't dated anyone in 3 years. So I forgot how. Sarah crossed her arms. You teach 32nd graders every day. You survive parent conferences. You negotiate with 8-year-olds. Emily smiled. They're easier than men. Sarah burst into laughter. You've been talking to this accountant for 2 weeks. He seems nice. He sounds boring. Emily shrugged. Boring sounds peaceful. She picked up her phone. Daniel Williams, 34, DAA. Enjoys hiking, coffee, books, volunteering. Exactly the kind of man her mother always hoped she'd meet. Nothing dangerous. Nothing dramatic. Just normal. 25 minutes later, Emily stepped onto the rooftop. The hostess smiled warmly. Reservation? Daniel Williams. The hostess checked the tablet. Perfect. Table 17. Emily took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. Meanwhile, Matteo had already been seated at table 17. His meeting should have begun 5 minutes ago. Instead, the accountant hadn't arrived. Luca quietly approached. I'll have security locate him. Matteo raised one hand. Wait. At that exact moment, Emily walked toward the table. She smiled brightly. Daniel? Matteo looked up. Their eyes met. For one brief second, time seemed to stop. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. No designer handbag. No expensive jewelry. Just warm hazel eyes. Gentle freckles. Long chestnut hair still slightly damp from the rain. She smiled as though the world hadn't disappointed her yet. Something inside Matteo shifted. Very slightly. Emily laughed awkwardly. I almost didn't recognize you. Silence. Matteo immediately understood everything. Wrong reservation. Wrong man. Wrong table. He could have corrected her. He should have corrected her. Instead, he simply looked at her. Nobody had smiled at him like that. In years. Not because they feared him. Not because they wanted money. Not because they expected protection. Just because they thought he was an ordinary man. For the first time in 2 decades, he wanted to know what that felt like. So he quietly answered. Emily? Her face brightened. You remembered. He almost smiled. Yes. That single lie changed both of their lives. Across the restaurant, Luca watched in complete confusion. He hurried toward another bodyguard. Who is she? No idea. Is she Moretti? No. FB? No. Journalist? No record. Luca frowned. Then why is the boss talking to her? Nobody had an answer. Emily sat down. I'm sorry I'm late. The rain was awful. Matteo nodded. It was. Another awkward silence. Emily laughed. I thought online dating would be less uncomfortable. You were wrong. She laughed again. A genuine laugh. It echoed softly beneath the restaurant lights. Matteo found himself listening, not to the words, to the sound. He couldn't remember the last time laughter surrounded him instead of gunfire. Emily picked up the menu. So, you really are an accountant? Matteo froze. Luca nearly choked on his water from across the room. Every nearby bodyguard looked toward the floor to hide their expressions. Matteo answered calmly. Something like that. Emily smiled. I knew it. You have accountant eyes. He blinked once. Accountant eyes? You look like someone who balances spreadsheets for fun. For the first time in years, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago almost laughed. The waiter approached nervously. He knew exactly who Matteo Romano was. His hands visibly shook. What would you like this evening, sir? Matteo calmly looked at Emily. You choose. Emily smiled. I love people who share food. She ordered appetizers, pasta, wine, dessert, without realizing every item she picked happened to be Matteo's favorite. He quietly noticed. She never did. Halfway through dinner, Emily suddenly reached across the table. Matteo instinctively stiffened. Nobody ever reached toward him unexpectedly. Her fingers stopped inches from his shoulder. You have something. What? Lipstick. She gently brushed a tiny mark from his collar. Her fingertips barely touched the fabric. Matteo stopped breathing. It wasn't romance. It wasn't seduction. It was simple kindness. Something no one had shown him. Since he was a boy, across the restaurant, every bodyguard subtly shifted. One whispered, Did she just touch him? Luca nodded slowly. And she's still alive. Emily smiled. There. Better. Matteo looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't pretending. She expected nothing from him. Didn't recognize his face. Didn't know his reputation. Didn't fear him. To her, he was simply Daniel, a quiet accountant. And somehow, that hurt more than being feared. Because for one evening, he finally understood the kind of life he would never have. His phone vibrated. Once. Twice. Then continuously. 30 missed calls. Encrypted messages. Emergency alerts. Luca finally approached the table. His face remained perfectly polite. Sir. Matteo didn't even look at him. I'm busy. It's urgent. Emily smiled apologetically. You should probably answer. He looked at her, then quietly turned his phone face down. It can wait. Across the street, high atop another building, a sniper slowly lowered his binoculars. He spoke into a radio. Target confirmed. Pausa. But, he frowned. Who's the woman sitting with Romano? A calm voice answered through static. I don't know. Find out. The sniper zoomed in once more. His camera captured Emily's smiling face. Far below, she laughed at another terrible joke from the man she believed was an accountant. Neither of them noticed the telephoto lens watching from the darkness. For Matteo Romano, the evening had become the happiest lie of his life. For Emily Carter, it was about to become the most dangerous first date imaginable. The sniper lowered his camera. Rain slid across the rifle scope as another photograph was taken. One image, then another. Every frame showed the impossible. Matteo Romano, smiling. Not much. Just enough for someone who knew him to notice. The man who had ordered executions without raising his voice was listening to a schoolteacher talk about second graders. The sniper frowned. Boss, he whispered into the radio. I've never seen him like this. Silence answered. Then Alessandro Moretti's cold voice came through the speaker. Keep watching. If Romano smiles, someone is about to die. 40 floors below. Emily laughed as she twirled pasta around her fork. You know, I imagined accountants would be less intimidating. Matteo raised one eyebrow. I intimidate you? She smiled. A little. Why? You barely talk. I listen. She tilted her head. That's rare. He almost answered honestly. Listening had kept him alive. Speaking had gotten people killed. Instead, he simply asked, "And what do you hear?" Emily looked at him for several seconds. Not at his suit. Not at his expensive watch. Not at the security earpiece hidden beneath his collar. She looked into his eyes. Loneliness. The word struck him harder than a bullet. Nobody, not in 20 years, had ever looked at Matteo Romano and seen loneliness. They saw power, violence, money, fear, but never the exhausted man hiding beneath all of it. He quietly looked away. Emily immediately regretted saying it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No. His voice remained calm. You're the first person who's noticed. Across the restaurant, Luca nearly dropped his wine glass. He stared at Matteo in disbelief. The boss had admitted something personal, voluntarily, for a woman whose last name he didn't even know. Emily smiled softly. My students do that. What? They notice things adults hide. He studied her. You teach children? 2nd grade. Worst decision of my life. She laughed. They're messy. They cry. They ask impossible questions. But every morning, they still believe people are good. She lowered her eyes. I try not to disappoint them. Matteo remained silent. Because he couldn't remember the last time anyone expected goodness from him. The waiter returned carrying dessert. Chocolate cake. Fresh strawberries. Emily laughed. I didn't order dessert. I did. She looked surprised. I thought accountants were supposed to save money. I made an exception. She smiled again. You're improving. A violinist quietly began playing near the windows. Rain shimmered against the glass. The city lights blurred into soft rivers of gold. Emily sighed. I love this song. Matteo recognized it immediately. Claire de Lune, his mother's favorite. For a moment, neither spoke. The music filled the silence. Emily closed her eyes. I always tell my students, if you're having the worst day of your life, listen to music before making any important decision. He quietly asked, Does it work? Sometimes. She smiled. Sometimes it just reminds you you're still human. That sentence lingered in Matteo's mind. Still human. He wasn't sure anyone had called him that in years. Emily suddenly laughed. What? He looked confused. You still haven't asked me one normal first date question. I haven't? No. You haven't asked my favorite movie, my favorite food, whether I have siblings. You've only asked about my students. Matteo looked down. I suppose. Those answers mattered more. She smiled. You really are different. If only she knew. His phone vibrated again. This time, Luca walked directly to the table. His expression was calm. His eyes were not. Daniel, he deliberately said. We need to leave. Emily looked between them. Oh, your coworker? Luca forced a smile. Something like that. Matteo never stood. 5 minutes. Luca leaned closer, his voice barely audible. Boss. They've located Moretti's convoy. This can't wait. Emily pretended not to hear. She quietly looked toward the rain outside, giving them privacy. Matteo noticed another act of kindness. Another reason leaving suddenly felt impossible. When Luca stepped away, Emily smiled awkwardly. I should probably let you go. He looked at her. I don't want the evening to end. The words escaped before he could stop them. Emily blinked. Neither of them expected that answer. She smiled shyly. I was hoping you'd say that. Outside, rain had become heavier. Emily wrapped her cream trench coat around herself. I parked 3 blocks away. Matteo immediately frowned. Alone? Of course. It's Chicago. So? So. He searched for a normal explanation. It isn't safe. Emily laughed. There goes the accountant again. He opened the restaurant door. I'll walk you. You don't have to. I know. But I will. 3 black umbrellas appeared instantly. 6 bodyguards stepped forward. Emily froze. Matteo looked annoyed. No. Every guard immediately stopped. I said no. They retreated without another word. Emily stared at him. Your accounting firm takes security seriously. He almost smiled. You could say that. They walked through the rain together. No convoy. No guards. Just two strangers beneath one umbrella. Emily glanced sideways. So, you've never been married? No. Engaged? No. She smiled. Heartbroken? A long silence. Finally, once. She looked surprised. What happened? I lost someone. I'm sorry. Suang, he never explained. She never pushed. Halfway down the block, Emily stopped walking. A tiny stray golden retriever puppy shivered beside a trash can. Without hesitation, she knelt in the rain. Oh, sweetheart. The puppy wagged its tail weakly. Emily removed her scarf, wrapped it around the trembling animal. Mateo watched quietly. You'll ruin your coat. I can buy another coat. She gently lifted the puppy into her arms. It only gets one life. Those words settled somewhere deep inside him. She wasn't performing kindness. She simply couldn't ignore suffering, whether it belonged to a child or a frightened dog. Suddenly, tires screamed. A black SUV accelerated around the corner. Too fast. Far too fast. Emily didn't notice. She was still comforting the puppy. Mateo did. His instincts exploded into action. Without thinking, he grabbed Emily's waist, pulled her violently against his chest. The SUV roared past exactly where she had been standing less than a second earlier. Its side mirror clipped a metal mailbox, sending sparks flying across the wet street. Emily gasped. Her heart hammered wildly. She realized she was pressed tightly against him. His arm remained firmly around her. His breathing stayed perfectly controlled, but his eyes had become ice. Not fear. Calculation. He was already searching rooftops, windows, reflections, escape routes. Emily whispered. That almost hit me. It wasn't an accident. She frowned. What? Mateo immediately regretted saying it. He forced himself to answer differently. People drive recklessly. She nodded slowly, but something felt wrong. His reaction had been too fast, too practiced, as though saving lives wasn't unusual for him. High above, the sniper lowered his rifle. He smiled. Interesting. He'd rather expose himself than risk her getting hurt. Another photograph. Mateo holding Emily protectively in the rain. Perfect. Exactly what Alessandro Moretti needed. Emily stepped back slowly. Thank you. He released her immediately. I'm sorry. For what? I grabbed you. She laughed softly. You also kept me from becoming a hood ornament. For the first time that evening, he genuinely smiled. Not because he meant to, because she made him forget who he was. They finally reached her apartment building. Old brick walls, flower boxes beneath every window, warm lights. Ordinary, peaceful. Emily turned toward him. I had fun tonight. So did I. She hesitated. Would you like to do this again? Mateo stared at her. Every instinct screamed no. Every emotion whispered yes. Before he could answer, Luca's voice crackled through the hidden earpiece. Boss. Emergency. They found Daniel Williams. Mateo's expression froze. Emily noticed immediately. What happened? Nothing, except the real Daniel Williams. The accountant Emily had actually agreed to meet had just been kidnapped by the Moretti family, and if they forced him to talk, Emily would soon discover that the quiet accountant she had spent the evening falling for never existed. Emily's smile slowly faded. The warmth of the evening disappeared beneath the cold Chicago rain. She looked at Mateo. What happened? He stood perfectly still. Only someone who knew him would have recognized the tiny change in his breathing. Inside his hidden earpiece, Luca spoke again. Boss, they took him 20 minutes ago. The real Daniel Williams. They know he had a date tonight. They're already questioning him. Mateo closed his eyes for the briefest moment. Everything had changed. If Daniel talked, Moretti would discover Emily. If Moretti discovered Emily, she would become leverage. Just because of one mistaken dinner reservation, Emily stepped closer. Daniel, His eyes met hers. She frowned. You look scared. The sentence almost broke him. Nobody had ever asked whether he was frightened. They only asked whether everyone else should be. He forced himself to answer calmly. Something happened at work. She nodded sympathetically. Then you should go. Instead, he quietly asked, Can I ask you one question first? Of course. If tonight had gone differently, if I weren't exactly who you expected, would you still have enjoyed dinner? Emily smiled without hesitation. I didn't like tonight because you're an accountant. She laughed softly. I liked tonight because you listened. The words stayed with him long after she disappeared inside her apartment building. The moment the front door closed, 4 black SUVs surrounded the street. Bodyguards appeared from every direction. Luca stepped forward immediately. We have to move. Matteo remained staring at Emily's apartment window. Fin Daniel, we already are. Alive. Luca nodded. Alive. And Emily? We've placed surveillance. Matteo turned sharply. No. Luca blinked. Boss, no visible surveillance. No teams outside her building. No cars. No drones. No one follows her. Luca stared in disbelief. Moretti is already looking. Exactly. If Emily notices armed men around her, she becomes part of my world. His voice became dangerously quiet. I won't allow that. Across the city, inside an abandoned warehouse, Daniel Williams sat tied to a metal chair, bruised, bleeding, terrified. Across from him, Alessandro Moretti slowly poured himself a glass of whiskey. So, you have a date tonight. Daniel nodded frantically. Please. I don't know anything. Alessandro smiled. I believe you. That's why I'm confused. He placed a photograph onto the table. Daniel looked down. His face turned white. It showed Emily laughing across the restaurant table. With Matteo Romano. Alessandro leaned forward. Tell me, why would Chicago's most dangerous mafia boss pretend to be you? Daniel whispered. What? Meanwhile, Emily unlocked her apartment. She leaned against the door, smiling. Her first date in years had been unexpectedly wonderful. She laughed to herself. So much for boring accountants. Her phone buzzed. A new notification from the dating app. Daniel Williams. I'm so sorry. I never made it to the restaurant. Emily frowned. Another message appeared immediately. I think something terrible has happened. Her smile disappeared. She slowly reread the text. Then another message arrived. Whoever you had dinner with wasn't me. Her heart stopped. She looked at the conversation history, then at the restaurant confirmation, then back at the message. Slowly, very slowly, she whispered, Who was I with? Across town, Matteo sat alone inside the back seat of his SUV. No music, no conversation, only rain striking the windows. Luca quietly handed him a folder. We identified her. Matteo opened it. Emily Carter, age 30, second grade teacher. No criminal record. No political connections. Volunteer at every Saturday at St. Anne Children's Literacy Center. Lives alone. Parents deceased. No siblings. One rescue dog adopted 6 months earlier. Matteo closed the folder. You investigated her. You ordered us to... No, I ordered background protection. You investigated her life. Luca hesitated. Yes. Matteo stared through the rain, then quietly said, Burn it. Silence. Boss, every copy. Luca couldn't believe what he was hearing. You spent 15 years building an intelligence network. You investigate everyone. I know, but not her. He looked at Emily's apartment building in the distance. I refused to turn her into another file. Back inside her apartment, Emily paced across the living room. None of it made sense. The man she'd spent 4 hours talking to had never introduced himself. She had assumed his name. He had simply never corrected her. Was he dangerous? Married? A criminal? Why lie? Yet, nothing about him had felt dishonest. His kindness, his attention, his quiet sadness, those things had all been real, hadn't they? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then his voice. Calm. Low. I'm sorry. Emily immediately recognized it. You. Another silence. I should have told you. You should have. I know. She sat down slowly. So, who are you? Long pause. I can't tell you. Why? Because the less you know, the safer you'll be. Her heartbeat quickened. You keep talking about safety. What are you involved in? Silence. Then, I need you to trust me. Emily laughed bitterly. You lied to me for an entire evening. I know. And now you want trust? I don't deserve it. His honesty surprised her. No, you don't. Neither spoke. Rain tapped softly against both of their windows. Two strangers, miles apart, connected by one impossible night. Finally, Emily whispered, Were any of it real? Another long silence. Then came his answer. Every smile, every conversation, every laugh, every second was real, and that's exactly why I had to lie. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed downstairs. Glass shattered. Car alarms exploded into the night. Emily walked toward her apartment window. What was that? Mateo's expression changed instantly. He heard it too. Through her phone, his voice became sharp. Step away from the window. What? Now, she frowned. You're scaring me. Emily, it was the first time he had ever spoken her name with urgency. Move. Immediately. She instinctively stepped backward. Less than 1 second later, a sniper's bullet shattered her living room window. Glass exploded across the apartment. Emily screamed. The bullet buried itself deep inside the wall exactly where her head had been. She collapsed onto the floor, phone still clutched in her hand, breathing uncontrollably. Mateo was already moving. Luca. The SUV accelerated before he finished speaking. Every vehicle in the convoy roared forward. Sirens, engines, screeching tires. Chicago blurred past the windows. His voice became ice. Seal every street. Nobody leaves. Find the shooter. Luca nodded. Already happening. Mateo looked out into the rain. For 20 years, he had never feared for himself. Tonight, for the first time, he feared arriving too late. Emily crawled across broken glass, hands trembling, her apartment filled with dust. Rain poured through the shattered window. She looked at the phone. The call was still connected. Daniel, she whispered instinctively. Mateo closed his eyes. For one beautiful evening, he had been Daniel. Now, that lie had officially ended. His voice softened. My name. Pause. Then, the truth. Is Mateo. Emily froze. Outside, dozens of black SUVs surrounded her apartment building. The first thing she saw through the broken window was a man in a black suit stepping out into the rain, not walking, running, toward her, as if nothing in the world mattered more than reaching her alive. Rain poured through the shattered apartment window. Broken glass glittered across Emily's living room floor like scattered diamonds. Her hands shook so violently she could barely hold her phone. Outside, black SUVs surrounded the building from every direction. Doors flew open in perfect synchronization. Men in tailored black suits rushed into position with military precision. Some scanned rooftops. Others secured every entrance. No police. No flashing badges. Only silent professionals who moved as though protecting a king. Emily watched in disbelief. Then she saw him. Mateo, still wearing the same black suit from dinner. Rain soaked his white shirt as he sprinted toward the entrance without hesitation. Bullets had nearly reached her. He didn't slow down once. 30 seconds later, her apartment door exploded inward. Emily screamed instinctively. 3 armed men entered first. Weapons raised, eyes sweeping every corner. Only after they confirmed the apartment was secure did Mateo step inside. The moment he saw Emily sitting on the floor surrounded by broken glass, every trace of the Mafia Boss disappeared. He dropped to one knee immediately. Emily, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard. Are you hurt? She stared at him, unable to answer. He carefully examined her arms, her shoulders, her face, looking for blood. His fingertips stopped just before touching her cheek. He wanted to. Instead, he pulled his hand back. You don't have permission to touch her. The reminder wasn't for Emily. It was for himself. Emily finally whispered, Who are these people? Silence. One bodyguard lowered his head. Another refused to look at her. Nobody answered. She slowly stood. Looking around the apartment, there were at least 12 armed men, each one watching Mateo, waiting for orders. Not one of them questioned him. Not one. Emily looked back at Mateo. They work for you. He nodded once. Yes. You're not an accountant. No. So, what are you? The room became completely silent. Even the rain seemed quieter. Finally, Mateo answered, I'm the man everyone warned you never to meet. Emily frowned. I don't understand. Luca slowly stepped forward. Miss Carter. Mateo interrupted immediately. No. Luca stopped. Emily noticed. Even his closest advisor feared him. She looked directly into Mateo's eyes. Tell me yourself. He held her gaze. I run Romano Holdings. I know that's not the whole truth. It isn't. Then stop lying. Another long silence. Then, my name is Matteo Romano. I know. I also lead the Romano family. She waited. Nothing. Then suddenly, recognition. Her face slowly turned pale. Chicago newspapers, television reports, political scandals, crime documentaries. One name always appeared. Matteo Romano. She looked at him again. Really looked. The expensive suit, the convoy, the bodyguards, the absolute obedience surrounding him. Her voice became barely audible. You're him, he answered honestly. I am. Emily instinctively stepped backward. No. She shook her head repeatedly. No, this can't be. You're a mafia boss. The words echoed painfully through the apartment. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Mateo simply accepted them. Yes. She laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because disbelief had become unbearable. So our dinner was a lie. No. You said your name was Daniel. You called me Daniel. I never corrected you. Her eyes filled with tears. That's still lying. I know. Emily turned away, trying to breathe, trying to think. Everything from the evening replayed inside her mind. The bodyguards, the waiter trembling, the expensive restaurant, the strange phone calls, his constant awareness of every exit, the way he reacted before the SUV nearly struck her. It all made sense now, and somehow that hurt even more. She quietly asked, Did you laugh at me? His answer came instantly. Never. Did everyone else? No. They all knew. Yes. And nobody told me. No. Why? He looked down. Because I asked them not to. Emily closed her eyes. So the whole restaurant was watching the stupid teacher date the mafia boss. They were watching me. She looked back at him. No. They were watching me. They knew I was the only person in the room who had no idea. The shame on her face hurt Mateo more than any accusation. Outside, Lucha's phone rang. He answered immediately. His expression changed. He looked toward Mateo. Boss, we have a problem. What now? We found Daniel Williams. Emily turned instantly. The real Daniel? Luca nodded. Alive. But barely. He escaped. He wants to speak with Miss Carter. 20 minutes later, a luxury private medical clinic. The top floor had been completely evacuated. Emily walked slowly into the hospital room. Daniel Williams sat on the bed. Bruises covered his face. One arm rested in a sling. The moment he saw Emily, he smiled weakly. So, I guess this wasn't the first date either of us expected. Emily almost cried. I'm so sorry. You didn't do anything. He glanced toward Mateo standing outside the room. He saved my life. Emily looked surprised. What? Daniel nodded. The men who kidnapped me. They were going to kill me. His people found me first. Emily stared toward the hallway. Mateo hadn't entered the room. He hadn't interrupted. He simply stood outside the glass door. Giving her space, Daniel lowered his voice. You know, I thought he'd be terrifying, Emily quietly asked. And? Daniel smiled. I've never seen anyone look more terrified than he did when he thought something happened to you. Emily turned toward the hallway again. Mateo stood with his back against the wall. Rain still dripped from his coat. His shirt remained stained with dust from breaking into her apartment. He hadn't even changed clothes. She suddenly realized something. He hadn't gone to protect his empire. He hadn't chased the sniper. He had come straight to her. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Neither could Mateo. Miles apart. Both stared through rain-covered windows. Inside the Romano penthouse, Luca entered quietly. You should rest. Mateo never looked away from the skyline. I frightened her. Anyone would be frightened. I lead. You protected her. I lied first. Luca sahu. You had one normal evening. For the first time in 20 years. It wasn't wrong. Mateo smiled sadly. It became wrong the moment she looked at me and believed I was a good man. Across the city, Emily opened her laptop. She typed one name, Matteo Romano. Thousands of articles appeared. Crime investigations, business magazines, political scandals, charity foundations, rumors, accusation, no conviction. Every headline described a different man. Monster, visionary, crime lord, philanthropist, kingmaker. She didn't know what to believe. Then she found a short local news clip. A little girl ringing the bell after finishing cancer treatment. Standing beside her was Mateo. No cameras pointed toward him. He wasn't giving a speech. He was kneeling so the child could hug him. The footage lasted only 8 seconds. Before walking away, he quietly wiped tears from the little girl's mother. No reporters noticed. Emily replayed the video 3 times. It didn't fit the monster everyone described. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse across the river, Alessandro Moretti smiled as photographs covered the table. Emily laughing at dinner. Mateo smiling. Mateo holding her after the near accident. Mateo running toward her apartment. Alessandro slowly tapped one picture. There it is. One captain looked confused. What? The weakness. He smiled coldly. For 20 years, I searched for something Matteo Romano loved more than power. He looked at Emily's photograph. I finally found it. He picked up a lighter. The edge of the photograph slowly burned. I won't kill her. His men looked surprised. Alessandro's smile widened. I'll make him choose. The Empire. Or the woman who accidentally reminded him how to be human. Across the city, Emily closed her laptop. Her phone vibrated. One message. Unknown number. She already knew who it was. Only 5 words appeared on the screen. I'm sorry I lied. She stared at the message for a long time, then slowly typed a reply. I don't know if I can trust you. Several minutes passed. His answer finally arrived. I know. I'll earn it. Emily looked out at the rain-covered skyline. For the first time, she realized the most dangerous man in Chicago wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for one more chance. Chicago had always belonged to fear. For decades, the city had learned to recognize the sound of black SUVs, the silence that followed Matteo Romano's name, and the invisible line nobody dared cross. But for the first time, Matteo feared something far greater than bullets. He feared losing Emily Carter. Not to death, not to a rival family, but to the truth of the man he had become. 3 days passed. Emily returned to teaching. She desperately wanted life to feel normal again. Her second graders greeted her with handmade drawings and excited hugs. Miss Carter, I lost my tooth. My mom finally let me get a hamster. I got an A in spelling. Emily smiled through the exhaustion. Children had no idea that 3 nights earlier, a sniper's bullet had almost ended her life. For a few precious hours each day, she could pretend none of it had happened. Outside the school, A black SUV remained parked across the street, never closer, never moving. The same vehicle appeared every morning and disappeared every afternoon. Emily noticed it on the second day. On the third, she crossed the street herself. The rear passenger door opened before she reached it. Mateo stepped out. He wasn't wearing his usual tailored black suit. Instead, he wore a dark charcoal coat over a simple sweater. For the first time, he looked less like a king, more like a tired man. Emily folded her arms. "You've been following me. I'm protecting you. I didn't ask you to." "No, you didn't." She looked at him for a long moment. "My students are starting to ask questions." "I know. So, stop." He nodded once. "If that's what you want." He turned toward the SUV. Emily suddenly spoke again. "Did you really stop because I asked?" He looked back. "I've spent 20 years giving orders. You are one of the few people who's ever given one to me. And I wanted to know what it felt like to listen." Emily didn't answer. She simply walked away. But for the first time, she noticed the SUV was gone the next morning. He had kept his word. That evening, Luca burst into Mateo's office. "We intercepted Moretti's communications." Mateo looked up. "What did he say?" Luca placed several photographs on the desk. School entrance, Emily leaving her classroom, Emily shopping for groceries, Emily walking her rescue dog. Every movement had been documented. Mateo's expression hardened. "How long?" "Since the restaurant." A dangerous silence filled the room. Then Mateo quietly asked, "Who leaked her location?" Luca hesitated. "There was no leak. They simply watched us." Mateo closed his eyes. "The moment I chose to stay at that dinner." Imagine. He stood slowly. "No more waiting. Tonight, the war ends tonight." Across the river, Alessandro Moretti sat inside an abandoned cathedral that had long ago become the headquarters of his syndicate. Candles flickered beneath cracked stained glass windows. Ancient marble pillars cast long shadows across the floor. The heavy wooden doors creaked open. Mateo walked inside alone. No bodyguards, no weapons visible, only silence. Alessandro smiled. "I wondered how long it would take." Mateo stopped several feet away. "You wanted me. You have my attention." Alessandro chuckled. "I wanted proof." "Proof of what?" "That even Matteo Romano could fall in love." Matteo's voice remained calm. "This ends tonight." "It already has." Alessandro snapped his fingers. Large screens descended from the cathedral balcony. Video feeds appeared. Emily, leaving school, walking downtown, standing outside a bookstore. Then, the screen switched. Live footage. Emily was being forced into a black van. Matteo's eyes narrowed. Alessandro smiled. "There it is. The first emotion you've shown all evening." Matteo lunged forward. Gunfire erupted instantly. Hidden shooters opened fire from the cathedral balconies. Marble exploded around him. Ancient statues shattered. Matteo dove behind a stone column. His hidden earpiece crackled. Luca's voice remained perfectly steady. "Boss, we've got her." Matteo froze. "What?" The kidnapping was staged. Our decoy team switched vehicles. Miss Carter is safe. Silence. Then Luca added, "We knew Moretti would try this." Alessandro's smile slowly disappeared. He looked toward his own monitors. Every screen went black. "One bi one." His expression changed. "You." Matteo stepped from behind the pillar. "You underestimated one thing. And what's that?" "I've lied once. I won't make that mistake again." Outside, hundreds of Romano soldiers surrounded the cathedral. Every exit was sealed. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Not because Matteo had called them, because he had already delivered years of financial evidence against Moretti's syndicate anonymously to federal investigators. He hadn't come to preserve his empire. He had come to end it. Alessandro laughed bitterly. "You'd destroy your own kingdom. For one woman?" Matteo answered, without hesitation. "No, I destroyed it." because she reminded me there was something worth building instead. The cathedral doors burst open. Federal agents stormed inside from every direction. "FBI, drop your weapons." Gunfire echoed for several seconds. Then, silence. Alessandro Moretti slowly dropped his pistol. His empire ended beneath the same stained glass ceiling where he believed he would win. As agents led him away in handcuffs, he looked back one final time. "You'll never be free, Romano." Matteo replied quietly, "I already am." 2 hours later, Matteo stood outside Emily's apartment. No convoy, no bodyguards, no security, just one man, one bouquet of white lilies. He knocked once. Emily opened the door. She looked exhausted, but unharmed. She had already been told everything. The fake kidnapping, the raid, Moretti's arrest, the collapse of one of Chicago's most violent crime families. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Matteo broke the silence. "When we met, you asked if I'd ever been heartbroken." Emily nodded. "You never answered." He smiled sadly. "I thought becoming Mafia Boss meant giving up the possibility of an ordinary life. I buried that dream the night you sat across from me. You accidentally dug it back up." Emily stepped outside onto the apartment landing. "The man I had dinner with, was he real?" Matteo looked directly into her eyes. "He was the most real version of me. The Mafia Boss was the mask." Emily studied his face. No guards, no power, no fear, only honesty. She smiled faintly. You still owe me something." "What?" "A first date." He blinked. "We already had one." "No." She laughed softly. "I had dinner with someone pretending to be Daniel. I want dinner with Matteo." For the first time since she had met him, he laughed openly. The sound surprised even him. 6 months later, Chicago had changed. The Romano criminal network no longer existed. Its legitimate businesses had been transferred into a legal investment group overseen by independent directors under federal supervision. Several charities that Matteo had secretly funded for years finally became public. Children's hospitals, scholarship foundations, literacy programs. Emily discovered anonymous donations had supported her elementary school long before they met. She smiled when she learned who the anonymous benefactor had been. On a warm autumn afternoon, the school's annual reading festival filled the playground with laughter. Children ran between colorful tents. Parents applauded student performances. Emily sat beneath a large oak tree reading a picture book to her class. A little girl suddenly whispered, "Miss Carter, your husband is here." Emily laughed. "He isn't my husband." The little girl pointed anyway. Across the playground, Matteo stood quietly holding 2 cups of coffee. No expensive suit, no bodyguards, just jeans, a navy sweater, and the patient smile of a man finally learning how to belong somewhere. Emily walked toward him. "So, the accountant finally came back?" He smiled. "I figured he deserved another chance." She reached for his hand. This time, he didn't stop himself from holding hers. The children watched curiously. One little boy tugged on Matteo's sleeve. "Mister, are you really Miss Carter's boyfriend?" Matteo looked at Emily. She squeezed his hand. He smiled. "Yes." The little boy grinned. "Good." She smiles more now. Matteo looked at Emily, emotion softening his eyes. "So do I." Above them, autumn leaves drifted gently through the afternoon sunlight. For years, Matteo Romano had ruled a city through fear. But the greatest victory of his life had begun with a simple mistake. A dating app, the wrong reservation, a woman who believed he was an ordinary accountant, and one extraordinary evening that reminded the most feared man in Chicago that love was never found through power. Sometimes it arrived quietly, sat across the table, smiled without fear, and changed everything without ever meaning to.